Okay, Sharon.
Good morning, ladies, and welcome to the Women2Women National Conversations Tour, our series, Let's Talk About It. And today we're going to take care of a few housekeeping issues before we move on to our panel discussion. As mentioned, this is an audio-only presentation, but should you have questions in the little chat box at the bottom of your screen, please submit your questions, and we will try to answer as many of them as possible. Please stay tuned to what we're doing at Women2Women. Follow us on all of our social medias because we will be presenting these Let's Really Talk About It series throughout the year. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sarah Chamberlain, President and founder of the Women2Women National Conversations Tour.
Thank you, Sharon. And Cecilia, thank you for putting this together. So ladies, thank you for joining us this morning. I really pray that your families are safe and healthy during this really crazy time. But just a little bit about the Women2Women National Conversations Tour. We travel the country engaging women in candid and frank conversations about issues that are important to all of us. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you in person. For those of you who I haven't met, I hope you will go to our W2W website.com website and see our upcoming events. Hopefully we start again in the fall, God willing. But I'd love to have the opportunity to meet each and every one of you. Today's discussion is a little bit interesting, it's a little taboo. We're talking about money and what we can do in life. A lot of things are out of our control, but right now this one is still in our control. So we have gathered an amazing group of women to share, educate, and inform us on the challenges we are facing during this difficult time of managing our finances. Today we're joined by Cheryl Holland of Abacus Planning Group, Kate Healy of TD Ameritrade, who's having a little technology issue and will be joining us hopefully in just a couple of minutes, and Ashleigh Brooker of AG Brooker Financial Associates. So ladies, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. I could read your resumes, but I will not do them justice. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you very quickly to give just a brief overview of your background, and then we'll get started with the questions. So Cheryl, if it's okay, we'll start with you. Cheryl. Cheryl. Uh-oh.
Huh. It's really weird. I'm on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I couldn't before. So
that's
you give
so
a little
strange.
bit of your resume?
Yes. So thank you, Sarah, and welcome everyone to talk about money. I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm also a certified family business advisor. What I might have in common with many of you on the call is I founded my own business. I'm a wife and a mother of a child who is an adult now, and I'm grateful that she's healthy and safe and still employed. And I look forward to talking about one of my great joys, which is working together with women to make smart financial decisions.
Perfect. Thank you. Kate, I understand you're on now. Kate? Hello? Okay. Then Ashleigh, could you go ahead and give us a little bit of your background?
Good morning. Yes, I'm also a certified financial planner. And if you read my resume, that's what you would see. But one of the things that's not apparent when you look at it is that it doesn't say that I was actually going through the process to get that certification at a time when you were hearing words like unprecedented unemployment and new normal and uncertain times. So a lot of those same words that we were hearing back then is what we're hearing now. And I actually experienced job loss during that time. So I think it gives me an interesting perspective as we're talking to this group of ladies today, because a lot of times you can hear about what's going on the news and get discouraged. But out of that, I ended up being able to start my own business. So I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you all and share whatever I can to help as you travel that journey.
Thank you so much. And now I think we do have Kate, the joys of technology, everyone. Kate, are you on?
Kate is on. She's having trouble hearing us, so I'm currently troubleshooting her volume, but we do have her. We just need a few moments to set her up.
Okay, well then I'm going to move on. So Cheryl, the first question is going to be for you. Do you recommend taking money from various retirement funds like a 401k to cover the financial shortfalls families are dealing with today? Cheryl?
I wonder what's going on with audio. Can y'all hear me? Hello?
I can now.
That is so strange. Okay. I don't know what's going on. So, Sarah, I was just saying that's an excellent question. And I think it falls into two segments. One, should I take money from my retirement plan? And the second is, how do I do that? And the second part is important because Congress changed the rules on how do I do that to make it much easier for people to take money out of their retirement plans. So let's talk briefly about should I. I think we would all acknowledge these are unusual times, but if we can delay taking out of our retirement accounts for our future needs, that would be the best way to go about this. And to first focus on lowering expenses, using up other short-term cash reserves, and restructuring debt, all of which we may talk about later. But if you find at the end of the day, the only way to put food on the table and pay your mortgage and other necessities, you can now take out up to $100,000 from your individual retirement account or your company's 401k. When you do that, you'll have 3 years to pay the taxes on what you took out, and you'll also have 3 years to put it back in if you find out that you do not need it, and therefore not have to pay taxes on that money and keep it sheltered for the long term. So this is an amazing opportunity. Congress recognized how many of us might need access to that money. If you're going to do your 401k, you need to contact your human resources contact in order to figure out exactly how to do that, because there are several qualifying steps that you have to take, but it's an amazing opportunity for those of us who really have no other options.
Thank you, Cheryl. Very important. Ashleigh, this next one is for you. One of our participants is asking, I'm behind on all my bills, such as my mortgage, car payments, and credit cards. How do I address my concerns with my creditors? And then how often should I check my credit scores?
Okay. Well, I'll address the first one as where you asked about being behind on your payments. The first thing that I would do is I would make a point to get in touch with those creditors. I don't think any of us can log on to our bank accounts these days without seeing something highlighted in big bold letters about, are you having trouble making your payments because of COVID-19? And so a lot of banks and financial institutions have recognized that a lot of people just are not making the money today that they were 3 months ago. And so as a result, if you contact them and say, hey, I'm one of those individuals, I need help right now, then you can work with your financial institution to go about restructuring that debt. A lot of times it ends up being where you delay payments right now, so that at the end of the term, you have additional payments at that point. So you still will owe it. Nonetheless, it will ease some of that that strain that your cash flow may be feeling at this time. The second thing that I would encourage you to do, though, before you even get on the phone with your financial institution, sit down, look at your budget, so that when you go into that conversation, you can have a reasonable conversation and be able to say up front, this is what I can do, this is what I can afford based on my current situation, so that you don't agree to something that's unrealistic for your life at that time. The second question that you asked was about your credit scores. How often should you go about checking your credit ratings and your credit scores? Generally, and I'm putting air quotes around my head when I say that, generally, I would say once a year, but there are some reasons where you may want to check it more often than that. Some ideas around that would be, let's say you were trying to buy a house and you want to make sure that nothing crazy hits your credit report as you're going through that underwriting process. So you would want to keep tabs on it during that time. Also, if you think that you either are the victim of identity theft, or if you are the victim of identity theft, or you think that you may be, then you definitely want to make sure that you're regularly checking your credit report so that whatever's on there will be accurate. And then finally, if you're someone who is going through a divorce, a lot of people don't talk about this, but going through a divorce can be a very stressful time financially. And you want to make sure that you are keeping tabs on what's going on with your credit, because as you come out of the divorce, a lot of it will be on you. So those are some key areas where you may want to look at it more often than once a year.
All right, so thank you for that. But I do something wrong because I look every month. I will now stop doing that. Thank you for your advice. Like,
no problem. No problem.
Cecilia, is Kate on? Hello, Kate?
Yes. Kate, can you hear us?
Okay, doesn't seem that. So Cheryl, the next one I'll go to you then. So the next question is, I'm unemployed and my income has dropped dramatically. How do I restructure my finances?
Sarah, I think many of us know this, and it's something we avoid or don't want to do. And if we're in a relationship, we have to do it with somebody else, which can cause friction and tension and struggles. And so I think you just have to sit down with your expenses and go through them line by line. It might mean dropping cable. It might mean dropping your internet and connecting with a regional provider to see if you can get free internet access or at a reduced cost because of your new financial situation. We're all eating at home more, but the temptation to eat out once we can might need to be avoided. So I think each of us know where we have a bit to cut. Putting off things like, new purchases for a car, renovating a part of the house, those kinds of things are all the front line, and just figuring out where you can cut and do for yourself. The second thing I would say, and Ashleigh's already talked about this, and I'll just add to the restructuring of the debt. The first thing I would do is call up if you have a mortgage, and rather than identify yourself, find out what the process is for restructuring your mortgage, so that by the time you get on the phone to talk about your unique situation, you have the protocol for that organization. And I would call everyone: the car loan servicing, the bank servicing your car loan, your mortgage. If you have a landlord, talk to them. And I think you need to brush up on your negotiating skills so that you can go online and read a bit about how to negotiate, something that women aren't necessarily naturally taught to be excellent at. And I think this is a case where you're going to have to negotiate for yourself and behalf of your family. The third thing I would say, beyond reducing expenses, negotiating tough on restructuring debt of any kind, is that for those of you who are unemployed, I think you know that the federal $600 a week that you may be getting or will be getting ends July 31st. So we need to be planning for that to go away as a benefit. Now, there have been people in Congress who've introduced an extension to that, so you need to stay tuned to whether you'll get that $600 going forward. But that is a meaningful difference for so many people, and to pay attention to that. The final thing I would say, cut your health care premiums last. I know they're a big line item, but in this particular pandemic, without health insurance, it could be quite traumatic to not have that coverage.
Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate that. And Cheryl did mention there is talk in DC of extending the unemployment. If you haven't already signed up to get our emails, please do that, because we'll keep you posted as to what Congress does to handle that. So thank you. Ashleigh, the next one is for you. I typically take great pride in supporting charities like United Way, Boys and Girls Clubs, etc. In order to protect my finances, should I stop supporting these projects for now?
That's a really good question. Once again, my answer is going to be it depends. But one of the first steps to that is, I know a lot of times when things happen, when our finances change, the immediate and natural reaction is, what can I start cutting out? And so as you do that, I want you to do just as Cheryl said earlier, start going line by line in that budget. The reason why I say it depends is because when it comes to charitable giving, a lot of times that's very personal and very important to people. So what I mean by that is some people may be giving because of their faith, where they're tithing, giving tithes or offering. Other people may be supporting organizations like the Boys and Girls Club or the United Way. So what I would do in that situation is really go through your budget to see what is my capacity to give during this time. And it may mean that you say this, where you have trade-offs and you say, this is important to me and this is not as important to me. So I'm willing to forego eating out as often so that I can give in the capacity that I used to. I don't want it to be a situation where I'm giving up eating for giving to the Boys and Girls Club. But the first piece is just to really go through that budget and identify what you can actually do. And then also, I would start to reconsider where you're giving, because whereas you may have been giving to multiple organizations in the past, during this time, you may say, okay, which of the organizations do I really want to make sure that I support during this time? And so you may reduce the number of organizations that you give to, so that you can reduce the amount that you're giving, with the understanding that this is temporary. Once things change and my situation changes, then I'll go back to giving as I have in the past. But for right now, based on my circumstances, this is what I'm committed to doing, and then go from there.
Thank you, Ashleigh. And also, for those of you who don't know, charitable giving is wonderful, but for right now, for the short term, written into the bills, both bills that the House and Senate passed and that President Trump signed, is a pot of money for charities to get them through this rough time in case people like us stop contributing for the short term. So I did want to highlight that. So Cheryl, the next one is for you, kind of back to what you said about healthcare. This question is, I'm trying to cut back on expenses. What are 3 things I should consider when looking at healthcare?
And Sarah, I'm just going to piggyback for just one moment on Ashleigh and the charitable giving and your point. So if you do have a favorite charity, I would let them know about the payroll protection plan that they may be eligible for. I found some of the smaller charities were less knowledgeable about that. So you can help by sharing that with them. And then if you cannot give, do not give. But if you can give, Congress also passed the $300 above the line, meaning that you can give up to $300 this year and have it count as an extra charitable contribution above your standard deduction. So that's just a small, tiny win, but that might be something to think about too. Yeah, I think the healthcare, oh my gosh, Sarah, that's such an important question. I gave a lot of thought to this as planning, and I think the very first thing I would say is for many people, it's prescriptions that are so incredibly expensive, and they just don't have the ability on their particular plan. Many states have an organization that provides free prescriptions. So I would go in your state and try and figure out what resources may be available to me. There are also for-profit organizations like Publix, the grocery store chain, that provide some prescriptions for free. So get out there and do your homework, right? The next thing I would do is talk to your pharmacist. Can I take a generic? What else would you recommend? Pharmacists are great healthcare partners, particularly when it comes to prescriptions and helping you find the most cost-effective way to do this. The next thing I would do, if you do have a health savings account and has any money in it, for those of you who have one, now's the time to use it. It comes out tax-free if you spend it on healthcare items, and now anything over the counter counts towards that. And then finally, I would say be sure to stay in network. I think when we have the luxury of extra money, we might say, I prefer this doctor over that doctor, and use the extra money to go to the out-of-network provider. But nowadays, I think we just need to stay in network because that's a way to save for your pocketbook. The other thing I would say, if you're still employed, but let's say your partner or spouse has become unemployed, you have less income for the family. When your company provides open enrollment for your healthcare options, you may have to reevaluate which plan you want and go with the less expensive plan. None of these are easy trade-offs.
Yeah, but great advice, Cheryl. Thank you. Ashleigh, this next one's for you. My husband and I are struggling financially. All of our investments are joint. Is this the time to separate our financial investments?
So I see you're going to make me the bad guy today.
I am. I'm like, ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah. And it really is a tough one because especially when you say struggling financially, that can mean 10 different things to 10 different couples. So one of the things that I would think about is, that in an ideal situation, a husband and wife would be working together towards common goals. But when you're talking about having the conversation of should I separate our investments, our joint investments, then that is an indication that you all are not on the same page. There are some situations where I would consider separating your investments. One of them would be in situations where you've received inheritance money, especially if you don't know how you feel about the person that you're married to. You don't want to go commingling it with them. So that's one situation where it would certainly make sense to keep those assets separate. But even more than that, a lot of times you have situations where people's philosophies around money are just different, and their approach to handling money is different. And when a husband and wife can't agree on that, then it very well may make sense to reevaluate whether or not that's working for you. In the meantime, one of the things that I would encourage this person to do is, with them having joint investment accounts, make sure that you're having that conversation with your financial advisor. I know it's never comfortable or fun to say that things aren't perfect in Camelot, but at the same time, if you have that conversation with your financial advisor, then it makes him or her more aware of what some of the dynamics are, so that if he calls and says, hey, I want to liquidate the account, they are aware of what's going on, so that they can at least get in touch with you about that. So, but if you don't have that conversation, we're none the wiser. Like I said, in my professional experience, it's ideal when people work together, but a lot of times it's so much bigger than money. So I definitely encourage you, in addition to working with your financial advisor, work with a professional counselor who would be able to help you with those issues that are bigger than the dollars.
Ashleigh, thank you. And thank you for that advice. I can't tell you, I've got a couple of girlfriends whose husbands went in and emptied the bank accounts and then filed for divorce. So that's great advice.
I think we've all heard of that situation or seen that situation. I've said it several times, where the person you marry is not the person you divorce. So you definitely want to keep your eyes open and make decisions that are going to be prudent for you long term.
Great advice. So Cheryl, this one's for you. I own a small business that typically has 3 employees that get W-2s. Once we reopen, is it better to convert them to 1099s and save the cost of the employee benefits?
Yeah, Sarah. So I think businesses that are just trying to stay alive and people want jobs no matter what form they come in. I think that first of all, you have to talk with your CPA or tax advisor to make sure you can legitimately have 1099 employees. There are some nuances to those rules. You don't want to trip them up. I think the second thing to think about is, what kind of employees do you have? Do you have employees that have technical skills or other skills that are hard to replace and train? Then you probably want to do the W-2 and provide the employment benefits, because retention and replacement is a bigger cost to you than the employee benefits themselves. But if you have a natural turn in your business where people come and go for whatever reasons, and that's not a detriment to your business, I would seriously look at the 1099 option as a way to save money and keep the business alive and keep somebody employed in this environment. So I think that's a great question, and it's one that will be unique to each of us as we ponder ways to come out the other end of this.
Perfect. I have a question that goes with that. The PPP money, they have to be W-2'd instead of 1099 employees, correct?
That's exactly right. And so you have to go, thank you, Sarah, for that. So if you've been W-2 and you have the PPP money, you absolutely want to keep W-2 employees. Okay. If you want to retain the money. Thank you, as a grant at the end.
So Ashleigh, this next one's for you. I may qualify for public assistance, but I'm concerned about the stigma attached to receiving public assistance when this is all over.
That's one where, you know, I had someone tell me years ago, pride comes before the fall. And it was at a time when I'm a financial advisor. And back then the way I earned money was if I got clients to buy or sell investments. And during 2008, nobody really wanted to buy investments. And so my pay went down by about 40% during that time. And one of my colleagues asked me, he said, "How are you making it?" And I was like, and I told him, and he said, "Well, can your parents help you?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to ask my parents. I feel like I should be able to do it on my own." And he said, "Ashleigh, pride comes before the fall." And I think a lot of times we don't want to ask for help because we feel like we should be able to do it on our own. And I don't want you all, if you are someone who's on this call and you legitimately qualify for assistance and it will help your family, and it'll keep them fed and it'll keep you in your home, do not be embarrassed to ask for help where resources are available. And the truth of the matter is the only person who really knows that you asked for help was you. It's not something where it's public knowledge that people know that you're on public assistance. So during times where you're not making the money that you used to, it doesn't say a thing about your character to ask for help. So if there are resources available, then I do encourage you to take advantage of them.
Thank you, Ashleigh. Totally agree.
Yeah, and I would just say we're all in this together. There's no one untouched. And so I would hope the stigma would lessen, but for corporates, business are needing money from the government to make payroll and rent. So it's not just individuals. And I think that those of us who are in the same situation as those of us who may not have had going into this. And whether it's food or medicine or money to pay your employees, everyone has an opportunity to access benefits from the government, which we've all paid for together as taxpayers.
Perfect. Thank you. Cheryl, this one's for you. So this person is new to the corporate world, employment. Should she hold off on enrolling on her company's 401 plan?
So I talk to young women about this issue all the time. I just got my first job. I can take money out of my paycheck and put it into the 401k for the retirement plan. And I would absolutely encourage people to continue to opt into their 401k. And let me tie this together. For one thing, you look at your options, and typically if you put in $1, your company matches that. So if you put in $1, they may put in 50 cents. They may put in an entire dollar. They may just match you at 3% of your total salary. So when you put in $1, you're actually getting more than the dollar. And so that alone is something you don't want to walk away from. So at the very least, if you have the flexibility, you always want to save into that plan what you're going to get matched by your company. And you can do more than that, but at least do that. Also, as I just said, the government now says you can take it out this year. So if something happens, you can take up to $100,000 out of the plan. So right now I see this as a no-lose proposition to go ahead and enroll in the plan, even if you're a little anxious about what might be happening in the future, as all of us are. The other thing I would say is saving when you're young is like the 8th wonder of the world. Saving $10,000 now over the next decade is much more powerful than saving $100,000 over a decade after you turn 50. So it's a tremendous leverage to do this, especially when you're young.
Perfect. Thank you. Before we open it to questions, we do have a third panelist who I hope we can now hear. Kate, can you hear us? No, maybe not. Sorry, everybody. Technology, it's kind of hit and miss some days. So having said that, we're happy to open it up to questions. Cecilia?
Yes. Let us see. Our first question says, I am a sole proprietor with no other employees. I have received a PPP loan. I have heard differing advice on how the funds must be used, by when, and how to account for and document the usage of these funds. I've heard the rules for sole proprietors using their Schedule C income rather than those with payroll. SBA says a minimum of 75% can be used for payroll, but I've heard that sole proprietors must use a calculation that equates to 8 weeks of funds for salary, and the balance must be used for mortgage, rent, or utilities. Can you clarify on all of that information?
Ashleigh, do you want me to respond to that?
You can.
And then you want to piggyback. So I would
Sure.
say, I think that you have two issues. One, that is accurate as I'm understanding your question. The second thing I would caution you though is every week the regulations are changing. So just keep very good records. It sounds like you know exactly what you're doing. Self-employment is different than those who are employing others. And I think just every week go out and look at the regulations as they're issued. But from my perspective, everything you shared, you are right on track. And it is the 75% rule. Ashleigh, is there anything you would add to that?
No, the only thing that I would emphasize, I don't think Cheryl can say it enough, stay on top of the rules because they're just changing so much. A lot of the banks don't know how to go about implementing what's been put in place. So as they're figuring it out, then that's when they're coming back with information. So just stay tuned.
And I'm grateful you got the money. That's the first big plus.
Kate, can you hear us now?
Hi, can you guys hear me? It's Kate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes. Okay,
I'm adding to my
Sarah.
resume now. Technology. I apologize.
That's okay. No problem. I have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With all the recent news regarding the problems with large financial institutions supporting smaller businesses, what do you think? Do you think it's time to maybe switch to a smaller community bank?
You know, it's very interesting. I was reading an article this morning that talked about where all the PPP loans are going, and that a lot of them are actually going to areas that are not as hard hit as maybe the coasts are. And what they found is it's because those people had relationships with their community banks and they're not dealing with bigger banks. So I'm not going to say you should move away from big banks, but I do think that it's important to have relationships with maybe more than one lender. So, you know, if you're working with one of the bigger banks, that's great. There's going to be, you know, there's kind of that trade-off. There's going to be a lot of services that they may be able to offer you that you might not be able to get from a more local community bank, but there's that relationship. And so much of what we do is based on relationships. You know, if you're looking someone in the eye and you know them well and they've got more power because it's a smaller organization, it's going to help you. And we did see this just in this recent pandemic with the PPP loans. The people that were getting them, you even heard from some of the bigger banks that said, go to a community bank. We can't even service them. Now, having said that, I think it's important that you have that relationship first. I think that's what we're also seeing is people had more luck getting the loan where they already had a relationship. So if you do have a relationship with a big bank, there's nothing wrong with that. You might want to try also cultivating those relationships with some smaller banks that you can have a more personal relationship with and hopefully help you out. But I think part of that, you know, the main thing is just that diversification. You're going to need to look for several different funding streams. So it's important to have those different relationships.
Perfect. Thank you, Kate. I'm going to give you a couple of questions.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Okay. We're going to make you work now. Like everyone else, I am nervous about my future finances. I am currently in college and receiving student loans to pay for my education. I'm concerned about repayment. Should I consider transferring to a less expensive school to cut costs?
You know, this is really a transformative time for education. You know, you have to weigh the pros and cons of what you're going to be doing. And if you do have student loans, think about how you are going to pay them back. I will tell you that schools are looking at all of this right now because it's a much different experience that people are paying for. And I think there's actually been some lawsuits already filed to schools around, I'm paying for this experience and yet I'm sitting in my parents' living room and that's not the experience that I paid for. I'm a big believer in, you know, if you can't afford college or if you think you need to take out loans, try to minimize the loans as much as possible. And so that may mean going to a more local school, a community school, the state schools, especially for the first 2 years while you're just figuring things out. The curriculum is the same at a lot of places, and you can get those same credit hours for a much cheaper rate. So if you can do that, that's a great way to do it. If you're thinking about repayment, you know, one of the things to think about is extending your college career and perhaps, you know, finding an employer who has a tuition reimbursement program, using them to help you pay for your education. And some firms also now do have programs similar to 401k programs where they're actually helping you pay down some of your student loan debt. So I think that there's definitely alternative ways as you're thinking about that. I think education is fantastic for everyone, but there are definitely ways to think about that. And, you know, transferring to lower cost schools is a great option. You know, where you graduate from becomes so much less important as you go through your career. You know, that first job might say, hey, where'd you graduate from and what your GPA was. After that, you're really getting hired based on what you've done, what you've accomplished, what kind of people you've met along your career, and how you've really grown yourself. So take a look at tuition reimbursement, employers that have tuition reimbursement programs, changing to a definitely a less expensive school, or extending the time where you're only taking a couple of classes and you're going at night and you're able to spread out that cost so that you're better able to pay for it.
Perfect. Thank you, Kate. And one more for you. I told you I'm going to work you here.
No worries.
One is we could all use a bit of encouragement. What advice would you give to a woman-owned small business that is not necessarily struggling at this point, but is still a bit nervous?
Yeah, I think we're all nervous, no matter if we're employed, non-employed, running a business or not. And I would just say, reach out to everyone you know, right? There's a perfect opportunity to just start to reach out to the people that you know, ask them how they're doing, but you're also really networking in a way. People want to support people that they are friends with, right? And a lot of times women are great at networking. We're not really good as asking for the sale or asking for the close or letting people know what it is that we really need from a support perspective. So I would say, you know, reach out to people. See if there are people that you can do work with where you can barter. You know, you can exchange some of your services for some of their services. It's a great time to really think creatively. What I think I would love to see people do during this time period is really use this time to think about how you're marketing your firm and what is your value proposition. How do you stand out amongst all your competition? And you know, one of the easiest ways to do that is just to start to ask your clients, what are the kinds of problems that you're solving for them? What do they think is unique about your business, and how do they describe what you do for them when they're talking to other people? When you think of what people are starting to tell you, that really becomes your unique value proposition, and you can start to use that as you rethink how do you position yourself to come out of this pandemic, to really showcase that you are the business that is the problem solver. What are the kinds of things that you can do to make sure that your business isn't going to struggle? It's a really good time now when you may be a little bit slower to re-examine how you are going out to the public and showcasing yourself, and take that time to make sure that your digital properties match that. This is a great time to also start to become more active on social media and talk about your firm and see how you can help with what's going on. You know, I like to tell people a lot, you know, social media is a couple different uses, right? We've all seen that meme of what you look like on, you know, LinkedIn versus what you might look like on Facebook. And Facebook is really great for showing people more of your public, your private side, what are the things that you do? What are your values? Your LinkedIn profile can really talk about how you're solving problems and what are the things that you're doing to help people. It's a good time to maybe start to write a blog. Think of how you can show your thought leadership. I'm sure that you've got a ton of pent-up ideas that you've had and you've never had time to do them. Now is the time to start to think them through. Also, bounce some ideas off your customers. I often talk to advisors that I work with and tell them, you know, one of the things that we do to help us improve is we talk to our clients. We've got an advisory board of clients who we share our ideas with, where we think we're going, and they give us great feedback, and it's a gift to get feedback from your clients when they tell you what you're not doing well, what you can do better, and what you should just stop doing altogether. There is some time now that you might want to think about how you can reach out to your clients and do that. And, and again, when you're reaching out to them, let them know what's going on in your business. I can't tell you, as this pandemic is going on and on, in the beginning, I thought of some of the business people I worked with, and I reached out to them to see how I could help. And each day I start to think of other people that, oh my gosh, I might only see every 3 months, but now it's almost 3 months I haven't seen them. Need to reach out to them to see how they're doing. So there's a lot of ways that we can all encourage each other, but I would definitely keep networking, keep reaching out to people and just seeing how you can help them and just talk through your businesses with each other. Women are fantastic at networking and helping each other. Just make sure that you're remembering to ask for that business if it's appropriate at the time.
Thank you, Kate. Cecilia, we have time for like one more question before I wrap up.
Yeah, we do have a question from a first-time home buyer. They're saying, I'm a first-time home buyer and would like to know what to consider during this time. Are there particular loans I should be looking for, any federal or non-federal programs, or any advice from any of our panelists on that regard?
Ashleigh, you want to tag team on this one? I am not aware of any federal programs that wouldn't be the normal, but I would say, be very careful who you pick out as your mortgage broker. A lot of promises can be made, so spend a lot of time interviewing different sources, and because oftentimes they'll match your rate. So I would say talk to different people, get different rate quotes, and go back to the person you think you can trust to actually get the work done and say, but this is the rate I was offered. And they can also be very helpful in clarifying for you upfront what you can afford, what you need to put down as a down payment. So when you go out shopping with a real estate agent, you can't be tempted off into a more expensive home because you can only afford X or Y. And that is also critical. Ashleigh, I don't know when you pick up with this, how you think about how much house you can afford.
That's a very good question. One of the things that I'll add to the first part about the loan, also make sure you're looking at a fixed rate loan. Interest rates are at historic lows, but we know they're going to go up at some point. So if you did get a variable rate loan, then the interest rate that you're paying now is not what you're going to be paying a few years down the road from now, and that will impact your monthly payment. The second thing that I would bring up is, as far as how much to afford, a lot of times how much to afford is generally based off of what your income is. But I would be very careful about taking on a new obligation during this time. I know that you are going to need shelter. That isn't going away. But the income that you make today may or may not be the income that you're making a year from now. And so I would caution you about making major purchase decisions when there are questions about the workforce and how much you will be earning, and you may be working somewhere but not earning as much as you are right now. So given that, also you want to make sure that when you're getting the loan, you want to put some down. I've heard some lenders say they'll let you put down as little as 3%. Keep in mind that you will have private mortgage insurance with a low down payment. And so with that, you will be looking at additional dollars on top of the regular principal and interest and perhaps taxes and insurance that you have built into your mortgage. So that impacts your monthly payment as well. But my main thing is just be cautious right now. What you can afford today, ratchet it back some, because you don't know what your finances will look like a year from now.
And I'll just add before we close, it's interesting right now, house prices are not declining. And so, just waiting until they might be a wise decision too. So they may not decline in prices, but it is odd that they're not yet, given all that's going on.
And it's interesting that a lot of the bigger banks have actually stopped providing home equity loans because I think that they do suspect that the prices will fall. So, yeah, I don't know that now is the perfect time to be looking at real estate.
And again, brush up on your negotiation skills.
So, ladies, I want to say a huge thank you to all three of you And Kate, thanks for sticking with us and getting your mic problem fixed. We really appreciate that. You ladies were amazing. And for all of you that are listening, you know, the Women2Women Conversations Tour is we listen to your ideas and bring them back to Washington. And we also update you on what's going on in Washington. And with so much happening now and so many bills coming, they're working on yet another bill. You know, stay tuned to our website, W2WTour.com. And we will keep you posted on all the changes and what's hopefully some benefits that all of you can take advantage of as DC comes back and Congress comes back to work. So thank you all. We really appreciate it. Hope you have a great day and stay safe and healthy. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.